Back to market on close. CoreWeave will be in the spotlight this afternoon when the company reports earnings after the closing bell. Estimates are for a loss of 39 cents per share on revenue of $1.28 billion. Investors will be waiting for updates on large contracts announced with Meta and NVIDIA and how they'll impact the bottom line. Shares are down more than 40% from June's all-time high right now. The stock finished more than 20% lower just last week. So that means it's time for Options Corner. Of course, joining us, Rick Ducat, our lead market technician here on Schwab Network, to talk about CoreWeave ahead of its earnings later today. As we're talking about CoreWeave, knowing how far they pulled back just recently, it is an interesting setup going into their earnings report. As we look at them against the market more broadly, obviously a much more volatile performance, but outperforming.
Volatile is really fun when it's going the way you want it to go. The past couple of weeks have been perhaps a little bit more of a different story here. But really, make no mistake, still up over 160% during the past week. Very strongly outperforming not only the XLK tech sector ETF here in this blue teal color, 43%, S&P 500 up about 22.5%. CoreWeave is a kind of a difficult company to make apples to apples comparisons to, though. What does CoreWeave do? Basically, they have huge supercomputer clusters. They let other businesses rent their processing and computing power rather than building out their own costly, difficult to maintain and make, computer centers of their own. So a couple other companies, Nebius Group, NBIS, Applied Digital, APLD. By this measure, CoreWeave is the extreme laggard. These stocks are up more than 400% or so. So really, it kind of all depends on your perspective with this type of situation sometimes.
And an interesting timing setup, too, because we've got CoreWeave coming into earnings right after the market closes. Nebius has their earnings tomorrow, so they will be back-to-back in terms of as close a competitor as you can find. But when we look more specifically just at CoreWeave into their earnings and what their technicals are showing us, I can already see from your trend lines that we are in a bit of a downward trend here, but certainly not as steep as we've seen in other charts.
Yes, and also one that has held on to a key supportive level here. Indeed, though, we are trending downward here. We had our highs 187 all the way back here, connecting the subsequent highs in this area during the early months of or the early days of October, excuse me. And then more recently, a steeper downtrend with our blue trend line here, beginning with this last high point that failed to take out those previous highs in early November. But crucially, though, if we look at our green line here, 105 approximately, 104.90 to be more specific, low points, high, and then low once again. That's about where we stabilized in terms of our closing price. For now, we're hanging on to this level. So this seems like a key point for the bulls to hang on to if they want to perhaps regain some kind of upward trajectory here. If we were to move lower, these old lows here near 85 stand out as a repeated floor. A quick glance at some of our other studies here, we can see that RSI has seen a significant interruption here. We are below the 50 midline. Our green trend line has been broken as well. We're below two of our simple moving averages here, our 20 and our 50-day simple moving averages, aligning together near about 126 or so.
Yeah, and trading about 104 right now. As we come into the earnings event, what are the analysts saying? What's the outlook here?
Not a lot of new information. A lot of what we saw was analysts reiterating their prior calls. The most recent new information was Evercore initiated coverage on September 30th with an outperform rating and a 175 price target. But it kind of runs the gamut here. Price targets kind of all over the map, mostly hold to buy for the most part. I didn't see any sell ratings here, but really a broad range here. Targets before were as low as 128. Now the range is more about 140 to 165 or so is what they seem to be looking for in near terms.
And as far as options activity on their earnings day, what's the volume been like?
Pretty heavy. 305,000 options trading hands today. The sizzle reflects about 1.7, 1.8 times the 5-day moving average, 62% calls or so. If we were to look at the general range for open interest for the November 21st expiration, 11 days out here, it comes in on the call side between about 92 to 200. Very wide range here. The highest level 160 with a 23,000 or so. The put side, the price has moved too quickly. It hasn't really caught up here. So that range is tops out near 130, so 65 to 130. 95 was the highest level, 27,000 open interest there.
All right, well, Rick, thanks for being with us to break down some of the options action we're seeing on CoreWeave ahead of their earnings after the bell.